Coming up this week on the show, we're going to be talking to Camilla Soksheva, a Google intern. She's been working on the FreeBSD pager daemon and is going to tell us about her initial experiences trying out BSD and going to a conference. As always, all the week's news and answers to your emails on BSD Now, the place to be, SD.
This is BSD Now, episode 83, recorded April 1st, 2015. Hi, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
And we're glad to have you guys with us this week. And we got an exciting show. And we start off with some really big news.
Oh, really? What do we got?
Yes. Major changes coming to PCBSD version 11.
Okay.
Yes, the PCBSD team has announced that version 11 will have some pretty big changes. You know, already we've seen the change of the NTP daemon and the switch from PF to IPFW. Switching from PF to IPFW provided many benefits, especially with vimage not crashing and so on. But the syntax was still too complicated for regular everyday users. So
it is a little difficult,
yeah.
huh?
So to solve this problem, they ported over Linux's IP tables. And so the syntax is much easier to use, as I am now showing on the live shot. Here's an example firewall config. As you can see, that makes a lot more sense than
this
PF,
is totally readable.
Than PF or IPFW ever did.
Yeah, these Linux guys have been doing it for a long time. This is definitely the way to go.
Yes, and while ZFS has served very well as the default file system for a while, you decided that BTRFS would be a much better choice going forward.
Well, it has reached a point of stability and maturity and just surpassed ZFS or ZFS in every way. So I don't see why not.
Yeah, those per file cloning things are kind of useful.
Yes.
But since the FreeBSD kernel doesn't actually natively support ButterFS or some of the other stuff, all file system calls will go through Fuse, because performance is good enough now that Fuse is built into the FreeBSD kernel rather than being a separate module.
Well, I mean, really, it's 2015. I mean, if you can afford it, just get a better hardware.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you can scale up and it'll be just fine.
SSDs solve all things.
That's right.
And people often complain about the huge ISO download for PCBSD. It was maxing out the whole 4 gig DVD. To save space, the default email client has been switched to MUT. And KDE has been tossed and replaced with DWM as the default window manager. That should make
that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's a lot fewer dependencies and much smaller.
Mm-hmm. Don't have to worry about nice things like OpenGL support and whatnot. So all you need is a Visa terminal. You're good.
To reconfigure it or make any appearance changes, users just need to edit a simple C header file and recompile. That's not difficult at all.
Yeah, I'm sure that's well documented.
Yes, and as we mentioned on the show, PCBSD has been promoting safe backup solutions for quite a long time with the Life Preserver tool, making it very easy to take multiple snapshots and sync them over to your FreeNAS or whatever. So to make sure that people have been listening to this advice, Chris recently activated the backdoor. He put in Life Preserver and it deletes all your files randomly, so hopefully you did actually back them up or have your TarSub subscription hasn't run out.
Well, this is a great way to really test and make sure the bare metal recovery options are all working. So, expect to look for that later today, folks, when you boot up next time.
Okay. And you want to tell us a little bit about this other blog post I say on your site about system BS?
Oh, yeah. So one of the other things that happened was we decided we needed a new init daemon. So we've forked and created our own version of system BS-D, which will now handle everything from init to power management configuration and monitoring all of your network traffic and possible backdoors and whatnot. That's where it's all going to happen now. So definitely keep an eye out for that hitting 11 here soon.
Yes. So it promises much faster boot up times. Even if your system crashes, you can reboot so quickly it doesn't really matter.
That's true. And one of the other things we mentioned on our blog today was we're going to be locking down the bootloader. so that for security reasons, you won't be able to boot any alternative operating systems or bootloaders because, frankly, I mean, come on,
Everything
it's
else
2015.
is insecure.
We don't trust those things. So and when you buy a piece of hardware, really, you just want one thing to run on it, and you don't own that hardware. You're just leasing it in a sense. So we will take care of that for you and automatically lock everything else out, which may be insecure.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
So
well,
moving on.
yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that and definitely look forward to it next year. Okay, so next up in the news, we have a cool article from the FreeBSD diary. It looks like NetBSD and FreeBSD have decided to join forces. So the BSD community, of course, has been running into one of the same problems Linux has lately, that we just have too many BSDs to choose from. And what's more, none of them really have any specific areas that they focus on or anything like that, and they're all essentially the same when you get right down to it. So, but the situation, as bad as it had been, is going to improve somewhat now as FreeBSD and NetBSD have just merged code bases. So we can now safely announce the new project, FretBSD, which will be available shortly. Within the week, they're planning on merging all mailing lists and web servers for legacy NetBSD and FreeBSD. Those will be terminated, and the new mailing list will be a combined project, which is hosted from a United Nations data center on a Microsoft Exchange server, so that we know it's impartial. And in addition to having it hosted there, we will have woN monitors moderating all the mailing lists to prevent disagreements and divisive arguments before they begin, and so that we can send peacekeepers in if anything erupts into violence.
Yes.
And we do fully expect the system will be adequate for the load too. I heard they have great connectivity, so we're going to be in good shape.
Yep.
So with FretBSD coming along, now your toaster can run ZFS, and you need not worry about the bread becoming silently corrupted again. So good times for all.
Yes.
Definitely. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think that's about it for that one.
Okay. Well, in case you guys haven't figured out that this was an April Fool's episode, yes, it is. So
Yes.
Anyway, we do have a regular show to get to today as well, but we hope you guys enjoyed that. And yeah, I enjoy when people don't get it at first.
Yes.
I get panicked email like, oh my God, you guys are doing what? No, yeah.
Yes, I was actually seeing that in the chat room. People are like, "Oh, your names are wrong. You gotta get it the right way around."
Yeah. It is so weird saying ZFS, by the way. I don't know
I
how
had
you
to
guys
pause
do that.
and purposely say ZFS. It was very hard to do.
So how do you guys say zebra?
No, it's a zebra, right? Because the difference is, you still pronounce words normally.
But
when you pronounce the letter is Z instead of
it's
Z,
a
right?
Z.
And so because ZFS is an acronym, it's in capital. So you're saying the letter Z, right?
I gotcha. Okay. Well, see, I learned a little something today. This is awesome. Well, let's get into some serious news today, folks. So first up, we have a Puffy in the cloud. So if you've ever wanted to set up a backup server, especially maybe for family members or someone who's not tech savvy, you've realized, of course, there's a lot of options, things you can do. We got a cool post over at Blogspot talking about the option of setting up your own Dropbox-like service with ownCloud and Postgres running on top of the new OpenBSD HTTP daemon. So that's pretty slick. So doing it this way with your own setup, you can control pretty much all the security aspects of it since it is a VM. You got your disk encryption, firewall rules, who can access what from where. And he also mentions the blog writer, our PF tutorial.
And he has a link to our website, and thanks for the PF tutorial and so on. And but yes, this is a great tutorial just because I'm not sure if most people are aware that you can actually run fancy PHP applications from the new OpenBSD HTTPD because it has fast CGI support. So it's actually fairly easy to as a drop-in replacement for Nginx if you're already doing stuff like that because the fast CGI stuff stays the same. So you don't change your PHP or ownCloud setup. You just replace Nginx with the even lighter HTTP daemon.
Oh, that's pretty slick. Well, this is definitely an interesting article, and if you have some less technical friends who need to back up their data, this can be a great way to host that for them in the cloud. So definitely take a look at this. Okay, next up we have some NetBSD at Asia BSDCon news, which was a couple weeks back now, so we're all recovered for that, and I am anyway. I hope you are, Alan. But some NetBSD developers have also put together a report of what they did in Tokyo at the Asia BSD Con event.
Because they had a NetBSD Developer Summit which
Oh, nice.
those
Okay.
don't happen as often as FreeBSD ones, so it was nice to see that. And then after, because that's invite only, after it, they had a NetBSD Birds of a Feather session, which was open to anyone. So there was lots of people
Nice.
coming to just, get to talk to other people about NetBSD.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, I was in the Beehive Con at the same time. Otherwise, I would have went over
Yeah.
there just to get to talk to some NetBSD people because they're
Yeah.
fairly good at hiding.
That was the next room over. Yeah, the same here at the Beehive Con instead of that. But this is a great way to see a recap of what happened there, and they gave a wrap up of some of the presentations. And if you wanted to see more and more pictures of NetBSD running on lots of devices, apparently there's a never-ending supply we have here. And at the BSD research booth at Asia BSD Con, there was a large number of machines on display, and someone uploaded pictures of all of them. So you can now, this is a great trivia game for like uber nerds, where you can go see if you can figure out what all those devices are just by looking at it. But we also have a video on YouTube that you can take a look of an Omron Luna 2 running the Luna 68K port. So nice. So how's that for some
That
different tech
reminds me,
here?
though, I want to get that picture you had of that 2U machine that had like 46 Atom processors in it.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to send that to you. That was pretty slick. Yeah, it was just a big 2U with just tons of Atom, I guess, blades in it or
Well, I
whatever.
wouldn't even call them blades. They were just like cards or something. Yeah, it was fancy.
It was pretty slick. Well, cool. Well, before we go to our interview today, of course, we do want to mention the first sponsor for the show, which is going to be DigitalOcean. And we know it's April Fool's, but it's no laughing matter when you're talking about setting up a VM. You want to have it with FreeBSD, so or BSD in general. But we have a coupon code for you today, which is FreeBSD Now, where you can go set up a VM within a few seconds. It's less than a minute usually. And this coupon will give you $10, so that's enough for 2 months of their cheapest VM hosting. Although you can change it to do it, what is it, by the minute?
By the hour, yep.
How's that work? By the hour, okay. So you could even fire it up a little less, like say if you only have time to work on it on Saturday and Sunday, and that could last you quite a while.
That's a lot of research time. So even if you don't have a spare machine, you can give FreeBSD a try and play with it, and you got lots of bandwidth, lots of speed. It's all on SSDs and big Intel Xeon processors. So.
Oh, yeah. So, and they have quite a number of locations as well. So if you're looking for something close to you or you have a great connectivity to it, great. If you need something far away because say you're going to replicate some data or store stuff off-site and you need to do some testing with that, you can get a data server, as far away as possible. I think they got stuff in Europe and Singapore.
They have, I think 5 or 6 different locations. So you can definitely spread your stuff out as well.
Nice.
But yeah, they have New York, San Francisco, London, Singapore, and Amsterdam.
Okay. Yeah. So quite a few to choose from, and they have a handy little utility on their web server as well, where you can test connectivity to each of those, see what kind of download rates you can get and such. So that'll give you a good idea of what you can expect there. So again, go to DigitalOcean.com and sign up now. Use the coupon code FreeBSD now and get that VM set up and start playing around with the BSD right now up in the cloud. It's too easy not to.
And even if you need, they have everything, right? You can get the tiny machine we were talking about for $5 a month or 0.7 cents an hour with 512 megs of memory. But if you need to do some high-end processing for a while, you can get one with like 16 cores and 48 gigs of RAM and 8 terabytes of transfer for 70 cents, and just run it for a couple hours.
Scale that up.
So if you need to run your Poudre real quick, you just do that and then turn it off.
Yep. Yeah, there you go. That's definitely a fast way to do it. So yeah, I mean, it's all kinds of different uses for these. But when you have control. When you have control of the whole host, in that case, I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff.
Renting that for a couple hours to run your build is probably a lot cheaper than buying the machine to put in your and building a data center in your shed.
Well, yeah, but the data center was fun.
Yes, I have a data center in my house as well. So
that's kind of like the new nerd thing. Like you got to have a data center somewhere in your house, and it's like, how cool is that? Cool. Well, again, go ahead and get signed up, folks. DigitalOcean.com.
Yes. Coupon code is FreeBSD Now. We're joined today by Camilla Solsheva, a Google Summer of Code student, a Google intern who's interested in FreeBSD. So could you tell us how you first found out about BSD?
I was doing the Google internship last summer, and I looked around in the morning when I was having breakfast and wondered whether there'd be some good company, and I found this like bearded hacker who looked like the open source enthusiast that I was looking for. So I sat down next to him, and it turned out to be a long-term FreeBSD user and conference attendee, etc., organizer, whatever. And he got me interested in the system. Later, when I'm administering a few servers at school, and I was thinking of how I could make that less painful for me. And I did some research and found out that FreeBSD could be helpful in that respect. So right now I'm looking into putting the FreeBSD servers into production.
That's very interesting. And you are also looking at doing your studies based on FreeBSD?
I am thinking about doing a bachelor's thesis in kernel development. I have played with writing a little toy operating system because I wanted to find out how it's done, and it was great. So right now I'm thinking about doing my bachelor's thesis in some kernel area, like perhaps the virtual the memory stuff or something like that, because that's like an area where you can both learn interesting things and actually also maybe make a difference in the real world, which is kind of neat for a bachelor thesis. So that would be great.
Yes, I think that's one of the reasons why FreeBSD is very good for academic type research, because in addition to being a relatively easy to use platform to build on top of to do research, if your research actually generates something, you can then go on and see it be used by not just other people and stuff, but also into big companies like Netflix and so on, and that's kind of a nice thing to have on your CV at the end, is that I did some research and now everybody in the world does it the way that I thought of.
Yeah, that's quite cool, and it's just much nicer to actually write code that gets used by real people. That's kind of neat. So that would be very, very nice. And FreeBSD really, at least from what I've seen so far, looks like a platform that will be relatively easy to understand for like other systems which are used in the real world might be harder to get started with. So I think that this could work well.
So this was your first BSD conference.
Yep.
How has it been?
It's great. I love it. Conferences have this sort of atmosphere that you don't find in many other places. And the BSD people are great. The talks are great. It's a wonderful opportunity for both learning and socializing to me. So it's great. Go to BSD conferences.
So what has been your favorite thing about the conference so far?
The fact that you can have a beer with, well, in my case, not beer, but something with like the legendary people who made all this stuff, and actually talk to them and learn things from them. That's, I think, is very valuable. It's like you actually get to talk about the person who wrote the first BSD, and it's great. I love talking with knowledgeable people who actually also aren't scary and won't bite my head off. That's kind of neat.
Yes, and I think one of the best parts about it is they're just as excited to talk to you as you are to talk to them.
That's hard to comprehend for me, actually.
Yes, I know it feels strange at first, and then you get used to it, and it's just the energy and excitement of all the people just kind of builds and on top of your own and makes everybody's more excited.
Exactly.
Yes,
it's great.
We'd like to say that going to the conferences recharges your BSD batteries because it's a volunteer effort. It's sometimes it's like, well, I have all this other stuff I need to do. How am I going to find time to volunteer?
Exactly.
But you come here and you get excited about the latest new idea or whatever, and it gives you that drive to find the time to keep working on it.
That is right. I have actually been thinking, even before I got to know BSD, I was thinking about putting my fingers into something in the Linux kernel, but I never got around to it because there always was something else to do. But here, like this conference where actually I can talk to the people who would point me at the things that need work, that really motivates me.
Yes,
and to be able to, like, maybe one beautiful day when I finish this, if the excitement lasts, I'll be able to just come here and say, hey guys, this is what I did, and give a talk on it or something, which is really cool.
But yes, we'd very much like to have you back to present your work when you're done, and let us know how it went.
I'd be glad to.
Do you have any advice for other young people and students that were interested in maybe getting started with stuff?
The BSD guys don't bite. They actually like new, young, excited people. At least that's my impression. Mm-hmm. It would be great to have more people in the project so that more cool stuff can get done.
Yes, that's one of the other things, is especially in FreeBSD specifically, but in all of them, it's easy to get help from other people. But
yes.
In FreeBSD, once you've gone to a certain degree, you get assigned one or two mentors who are responsible for helping you wade through the particular way things are done and the way the community works. Where as a new person from the outside, it's
yes.
kind of daunting, but when you have mentors that will help walk you through it, it's much more reassuring.
Yeah, that's actually very cool. This is something that probably not that many projects have, and I find that the prospect of actually having someone who will be willing to help me, it's great. I love that idea.
Yes, and, in the beginning you can just ask anybody, but at some point you're asking a lot of questions, and you might feel guilty about asking them to everybody all the time. But when you have a mentor, that's their job. They volunteered for it, and you have that person you can always turn to help you through it. And
that is fantastic. That's why I think that's one of the many reasons why I think that BSD is going to be a great project to start with.
Well, I wish you all the success with it.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you again at another conference.
Okay, hope you guys enjoyed the interview. So before we go to the news roundup, of course, we do want to mention another sponsor this week, which is going to be IX Systems. And the URL for that, of course, ixsystems.com/BSD Now, where you can go right now, fill out a little bit of information, download their awesome guide, which will talk to you about what you need to know before you purchase a server for open source, things to know about your vendor, ways to talk to management about that, etc. And of course, get in touch with these guys and tell them exactly what you're trying to solve here. Don't just say, well, I want a server with this, 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 and this. Explain to them what you want to do on the server. Exactly. That way they have a better idea. And remember, these guys, this is what they do. So when you explain to them, well, I'm running a really high volume mail server or a large file server or whatever it is, then they can start offering suggestions like, oh, well, in that case, you can save a little money by doing this and putting more money into this. You'll get better performance, and they know all their stuff. So,
I think that's the biggest thing. And they had a blog post about it a little while ago where it's not so much about designing, what's the best performance I can get. It's what's the least performance I can deal with. Right? So in a worst case scenario, I need to be able to do at least, this many megabytes per second or this many IOPS. And setting out that baseline is actually usually where it determines what goes into the machine. Is I need to guarantee that I'll always be able to do at least this much per second. And then any more than that is great, but it can't ever go below this. Otherwise, our database can't keep up, or our virtual machines are too slow, or whatever. And that's why it's really important when you talk to them to tell them, what it is, what your problem is, rather than what you want, because they can help you fine tune that.
Definitely. And because they know all this stuff, like if you talk to them, I doubt there's much you could tell them that would surprise them at this point. They've probably done it all already. But if you tell them exactly what your use case is going to be, what kind of stuff you're going to be doing with the systems, odds are they already have a pretty good idea what's going to work for you and can help suggest that and build the system you guys are looking for exactly to the specs that you need to achieve that performance level that you can live with. So IX Systems guys make that all possible. Of course, have their awesome burn-in process where they're going to check everything before they ship it to you to make sure if they're shipping it directly to you or to the data center or whatever, that it is ready to go from day one. You're not dealing with that lemon hard drive or whatever, 5 hours out of the box. So they're going to definitely take care of all that for you.
I think we have a story about that a little bit later in the feedback as well. And they also announced today that DCIG, which was putting together a buyer's guide of the best small, mid-size enterprise hybrid storage stuff. So they put together a buyer's guide, and they looked at the TrueNAS Z20, which is the
Nice.
fancier version of the FreeNAS with all the enterprise features, and they gave it the excellent rating. And it's
okay.
got a very high rating, and basically it has all the features you need to run, even a large enterprise's storage stuff. You can compete with things like your net apps and so on, just with fewer zeros in the dollars in the
That's
price.
right. That's right. Which is a win for pretty much all businesses always around. So definitely get in touch with the guys at IX and let them design your next system, your next server, and build it all out to the specs that you need. So again, ixsystems.com/BSD Now, and do let them know we sent you. We'd appreciate that. Okay, so first up in the news roundup, we have FreeBSD Foundation has sent out their March update. So we have a link to the PDF for that here on the show notes. But it looks like they have an update mostly on the fundraising and some of the sponsored projects that are going on, including some information about the new ARM V8 enhancements.
Yes, some of those have actually started to land in the source tree in the last week or two.
Yeah, we've seen some commits go by for that.
Actually, if you just see, they have upcoming events over there on the side. They mentioned Linux Fest Northwest, which is April 25th and 26th in Bellingham, Washington. Both Chris and I and a bunch of other FreeBSD people will be there representing BSD at the Linux Fest and edifying all the Linux people about why they shouldn't be Linux people anymore.
Right.
So there will be that. And then Chris and I will also both be at BSDCan in June. So we also recommend people come out for that. It's always my favorite of the BSD conferences.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. We got some exciting stuff coming up. It's hard to believe Linux Fest is only, gosh, what is that, 3 weeks away now? 4 weeks away?
Like 3.5 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, it's getting close. See, that's fun for me because it's going kind of like going back home. So I was from Washington State originally. So that'll be awesome. Looking forward to it. But they have some of the event recaps as well and the Summer of Code status update. So definitely worth a read. And it looks like in their update, they also mentioned our interview with the Foundation president, Justin Gibbs, we did.
They linked that in there. So, and just a reminder, EuroBSDCon is in October, 1st through 4th, and the deadline to submit a paper is April 17th. So hurry up and get your proposals in so that they can pick them and you can get your free flight to Sweden.
That's right. That's right. I hear the food's good. I've had several people recommend it, so definitely try and get those in. Okay, next up we have some OpenBSD news. We got a cool article about the new HTTP denaming, and we've seen a lot more BSD news kind of dominating the mainstream tech news sites. Well, maybe not really dominating, but they are talking about it once in a while now, which is good.
Exactly. And
so the next one to do that is SD Times is featuring an article about OpenBSD's in-house HTTP server after seeing Reich's Asia BSDCon presentation about it, which he's also going to be giving at BSDCan this year as well. So if you couldn't make it out to Tokyo and like to see it live, definitely try and make it up to Canada where you can do that. But in this article, they're talking about the rapid transition of web servers in the base system.
Yeah,
Apache being replaced.
Yeah, they went from Apache to Nginx to HTTP pretty quick, actually.
Yeah. Poor Nginx, it didn't really get the honeymoon period. It was like in and out.
Yeah.
But that's progress. That's good to see, though. Yep. But with HTTP being put in shortly after it hit. So since the new daemon has pretty much had a full release cycle to grow now, it has enough new features and fixes that have poured in to make it quite a viable solution. And this post this article is going to talk a little bit about some of the security features with, for example, everything running in a chroot with a privilege separation by default. Also leverages strong TLS 1.2 defaults, including perfect forward secrecy.
Yes, and I think it uses the new LibreSSL libTLS API instead of the old OpenSSL style API. So it's just cleaner code and less chances of mistakes there. And
nice.
It's interesting that it basically has all the features you look for when you install Nginx as your light web server. And Nginx has grown a lot and has a lot of extra stuff now. And oftentimes it's like, well, I just want to serve some static files and maybe do a fast CGI off to a PHP process or something. And the basic HTTP can do all that, right? You can serve static files, run your fast CGI. It runs chrooted with privilege separation by default. It has the new LibreSSL TLS features. It has virtual servers, so you can do name and IP-based virtual hosts. Reloads the running configuration without interruption. Which is nice, and it has the per server logging to separate log files or to syslog, and it has all the features to block, drop, or redirect connections as well. So it's pretty much everything you need from a basic web server.
But this is a great starting place. Definitely check out the article, and it's neat to see other news sources starting to cover more BSD topics. So maybe reward them with clicks, and they can go, oh, wow, we got a lot of traffic on that article. We need to do more BSD stuff in the future. So that's one way you can help show your support. Okay, next up we have Poudre news, using it without OpenSSL. We have a cool blog post about this. But last week we had talked a little bit about using LibreSSL in FreeBSD for all your ports.
Yes.
And one of the problems we mentioned is that some ports may still be configured improperly and end up linking against the OpenSSL in the base system, even though you've tried to tell them not to do that. And they've worked on fixing a number of those, but there could be some edge cases still out there. So this blog post shows you how to completely strip OpenSSL out of the build jail, something that's a lot more difficult than you think, because you end up having to rebuild world without OpenSSL, which builds some things without it and breaks some stuff. But yeah, so if you're a port maintainer, you should probably pay close attention to this post and get your ports fixed to adhere to make.conf options properly, because this will help you sniff out those ones which are broken.
Yeah,
they obviously won't compile.
So there you so you just build an extra jail called NoSSL, or 10 AMD64 NoSSL, and then you can use it as a test for all your ports. And if any of them don't work, then hey, this has an undeclared dependency to SSL, where it's using the system SSL because it's not depending on the ports SSL, which it should be doing. So yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's definitely a good idea. I'd almost like to see the BSD project do an XP run of something like that.
Yeah, or
do this build and just do a complete run, see what breaks, so that we know.
That package nagging system that nags you if your port doesn't build on all the reference jails.
That's what I mean.
If they added a NoSSL one to that would be every port maintainer would get extra nagging now.
Yeah, that's right. Just let people know this is the list of ones that still need some fixing. But that kind of ties into maybe something we can talk about at BSD Can about having SSL be a private library in the base, and that would kind of do the same thing, but in a little more supported fashion.
Yes, so it would just you wouldn't have to strip SSL out. You would just stop.
Don't have to worry about it. Nothing else would see it.
Exactly. Only these things in the base system like libfetch would be able to link against it.
But yeah, definitely this is a neat way to do that. So again, porters, package builders, take a look at this. This is something interesting, especially if you're considering a switch from OpenSSL to LibreSSL in the future.
Right. It's also just an easy project if you're not a porter or a developer and you want to help out. If you can just follow these instructions, set up a NoSSL jail, try to compile stuff, find things that break, and open the PRs to get the attention onto them.
That is true. That is true. Okay, so we get some cool file system news here. This is kind of neat, but looks like we have someone, it looks like a Google Assembler code student, wrote into the OpenBSD lists about his HammerFS porting proposal, which is interesting.
Yes, wants to port the HammerFS over to OpenBSD. And at Asia BSDCon, we saw they were saying, hey, we really need to get a better file system, or at least even just catch up to FreeBSD's version of UFS so that they get snapshots and so on, and soft updates. But this one actually talks about, has a schedule set out of how they would actually deal with porting HammerFS, Hammer 2, and also which parts they would not port because, they only have, 12 weeks or something like that, right?
So kind of a realistic timetable of this is what we could reasonably accomplish in the short time for a Google Summer Code project.
Yeah, it looks like they basically planned out 8 weeks and then leaving the rest of the weeks as, time to deal with unexpected complications.
Sure. So they'd leave a few things out, like the clustering stuff. Maybe that could come in later. But this is interesting. We don't have word yet if it will be accepted, but it's an interesting idea to explore, especially when you consider right now that Hammer kind of only has one developer. So we need to see it get some more uptake elsewhere. Also,
I imagine the mentor would have to be pretty good with the VFS layer. So that's a very small subset of people. But hopefully they can find someone to mentor. And probably a co-mentor would be good to have two. It's always best to have two mentors on a Google Summer of Code project because it is quite a bit of work.
It is. It is. So also some other disk-related news. Ken Westerback has been committing quite a lot of GPT-related fixes into OpenBSD recently. So they are definitely getting all caught up there. And it looks like full GPT support will most likely be finished before 5.8. But obviously HammerFS and other file systems are still anybody's guess. So we'll just keep an eye on that, see what happens.
GPT would be very nice to have in OpenBSD because better support for disks over 2 terabytes, more partitions, and just compatibility with other stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it also helps, some laptops are starting to assume that you're using GPT for your file system.
That's true. Well, one of the things they might run into too that we saw is some BIOSes, when they see GPT, they assume you're using UEFI. So that's an interesting one, but that's more of an edge case. So we'll definitely keep an eye on this. I imagine when they start announcing the full Google Summer of Code list what got accepted, we will of course bring that to you as soon as possible so we can see what's going to be happening in all the BSD projects this summer. And looking forward to that. So let's see, they haven't closed that yet, have they, Alan? There's still a little bit of time.
No, I think they still have a couple days to finish submitting before they start picking them.
Nice. Okay, well, if you plan on submitting something or would like to, try and get it in as soon as possible. The window is closing here, so get your proposal in soon. Okay, so we have some feedback from you folks, but of course, before we get into that, we do want to mention Tarsnap now, which the URL for that, tarsnap.com/BSD Now, where you can go and get signed up. And come on, it only takes a few seconds. Put a few bucks in there and start doing your backups. The joke would be on you. It may be April Fool's today, but if you lose data, that's not how you want to spend
funny at all.
That's the kind of joke maybe 20 years it'll be funny, but today it's really going to suck.
Well, the funny part is, being that it's April 1st, I got my Tarsnap invoice. And I look at it, I'm like, is this a joke? I only paid 13 cents for my backups?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, at those prices, come on. I mean, you put $5 in, that could last you a long time.
Yeah.
And of course, Tarsnap makes it easy to get set up. Everything's encrypted on your system before it gets sent over to them, so you don't have to worry about who might be trying to peek at data or who wants access to it because they don't have the key. So, joke's on them. So, anyway, you do want to go get set up with that. They have clients for about everything under the sun up on the website with instructions on how to get it set up. And of course, if you're familiar with tar, the syntax is going to be very, very similar. So you should feel pretty comfortable with it out of box.
Yeah, I have it set up. It takes a backup of my ZFS file share that has all of my important business stuff on it, like 3 times a day. And it cost me 13 cents last month to back up all that data.
Nice.
Because it's differential, it only sends the extra bytes of what's changed, which, business documents is not that much.
Sure.
And, a little bit of source code or whatever, so I don't lose that. And it really is a great service, and it's definitely worth the 13 cents.
Definitely worth it. So again, tarsnap.com/BSD Now, and let them know that we sent you. We'd appreciate that.
13 cents is a very low price for being able to sleep at night.
That's right. Even if the house burns down, it's somewhere offsite in the cloud where you can get it back.
Yeah.
Okay, well, first up this week, we have Morgan writes in asking about encapsulating ZFS.
Yes.
So he says, I'm running a FreeBSD 10.1 server on an SSD media that acts as a host for a Beehive guest. The guest also runs FreeBSD, is contained in an image file on the host. Both boot with ZFS enabled and use data compression. I suspect that the ZFS inside of ZFS is like crossing the streams in Ghostbusters, and that's where my question comes in. Surely there must be contention between the guest and host for compressing already compressed data on writes, or doubly decompressing data on reads. I'm saving space as both the host and guest OS reports data compression savings, but at a cost in performance, I'm sure. I've searched for the best practices articles about this, but I've found nothing. Nothing has left me. But I've found nothing and has left me guessing. For example, I could opt for larger image files on the host and disable compression inside the guest. That would put all compression exclusively on the host, where I suspect it's more efficient. Or I could disable compression on the host file system, holding the Beehive images, opting for smaller images, maximizing that space by enabling compression inside the guest. which way is best. I would appreciate any recommendations or resources that you can offer.
Well, for performance, you probably first thing I would do is move away from image files and use zvols as the backing.
Sure.
And then, that removes an extra layer, right? Because you're just, so the Beehive is then simulating a block device backed by a file, whereas you can just give it the zvol as the block device. But you have to make sure it's in dev mode, otherwise things happen. That, and then for the compression, doing it in both isn't necessarily a bad thing if you're using LZ4, because LZ4 will look at a block when it goes to write it and look like, oh, hey, this isn't compressing, so I'm not going to bother compressing it. And so it doesn't put the flag that it's compressed on it, and then when you read it back, it doesn't try to decompress it because it knows it's already uncompressed. So it only compress blocks that are still compressible. It's maybe a little strange that he's getting compression on inside and outside. It's sort of weird, but in general, yes, you'll have better performance to compressing outside. So leaving it off inside maybe is okay. In general, I don't know that it makes that much of a difference. I meant to ask Matt Ahrens about this because I know at the company he works at, they actually run ZFS. They make a database virtualization appliance, and they use ZFS, I think, inside. And on the host. I know they have like a SAN, and they run ZFS off that, and then inside I think they use ZFS as well. I think the biggest one there might actually be that the way synchronous writes happen, making sure that happens the best way. Make sure that you're getting your data integrity, but also at the same time not slowing down too much to do the double write barrier or whatever. So, if it's not causing you problems, I just wouldn't worry about it. But in general, you're probably better off turning off compression inside and just doing it outside. And ZFS, if you're using LZ4, it's smart enough to not try to compress stuff that's uncompressible, and it won't try to decompress something that's already uncompressed.
So you may not see any huge performance differences.
And that's the other thing. LZ4 can compress like gigabytes per second per core. And your even your SSD can't go that fast. So you're never going to use 100% of one CPU core just on compressing and uncompressing, because your array is not going to be able to read and write many gigabytes per second.
Sure. Okay. Well, next up we have Dustin. Do you want to read this one out?
Another ZFS question. This is great.
All right. Yay.
I'm a longtime listener to BSD Now and love all the great interviews, news, coverage, and information you put out for listeners trying to learn more about BSD and so on. Ever since first hearing about FreeNAS and ZFS, I knew that this was going to be my go-to solution for maintaining our family photos and our most precious files. It took me about a year and a half slowly get all the gear I needed, getting it all put together and having the time to actually play with it, and finally move our data over to a 4-drive RAID Z2 setup. I initially installed FreeNAS 9.2, or some minor point release that came after that, and wanted to upgrade to 9.3 when it became available. So I went to the site and downloaded the upgrade from the FreeNAS site there, and I clicked on the download button beside upgrading FreeNAS. The hypertext over it stated 9.3-release x64 tar xz. I downloaded the file and ran it. Everything was fine, but I noticed that it actually downloaded the 9.3 stable image. The hypertext said release, but handed me stable. I just didn't notice that this is the file name before applying it. I don't know if that's just how they do it or which.
I don't know if that's just an artifact of the website or
I think almost all FreeNAS is built off the stable branch, not a release anyway. So.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, he has a few questions. He says he views his family pictures as being priceless and invaluable. He runs a RAID Z2 and is planning on being able to run 9.3 release with some added stability, but have now painted himself into a 9.3 corner or 9.3 stable corner that has the option of getting updates every now and then. And my email is now blowing up with available update options. He says, is stable safe enough to store my precious files on? I have also taken Alan's advice of storing multiple copies using different forms of media, but this is my main storage rig and all the other options. He says, are there options for moving a pool from a 9.3 stable install to a 9.3 release install? So for that, the version of FreeNAS doesn't really affect the pool directly. The FreeNAS software just sits beside, and then you have the ZFS version. And as long as your pool doesn't have any of the newer features, that pool will be usable on any version of FreeNAS. And the best part about using ZFS is that you can import that ZFS pool on any sufficiently new version of FreeBSD or Illumos or Linux or whatever. So even if FreeNAS had a problem with their release or something, your files are really not in danger of going away.
Sure.
And even if the FreeNAS stopped working or whatever, you'd just be able to
reinstall it.
Yeah, you can just reinstall a completely brand new FreeNAS version and import your old pool, and all your files will still be there. So you can easily just re-download and reinstall the FreeNAS on the USB stick or whatever, and it won't touch your data on your hard drives.
Okay.
And really, that's the best thing about ZFS is that, you ask, can I move the pool? It's like, yes, you could actually pull those disks out of that machine, stick them in some other machine running some completely different operating system, zpool import, and boom, all your files are there. That's what makes ZFS so amazing.
Yep.
And he says, also in episode 81, Puffy in a Box, Alan mentioned something interesting about labels on disks in ZFS. Alan mentioned that the disks are labeled in such a way that the pool can return from the dead. At first, when I heard this in the past, I assumed it was making sure that other systems wouldn't damage the pool by accidentally writing over one or two of the 4 labels. But I thought I heard Alan mention that you can swap your drives around physically in the system and still be able to find them. Yes. So there's 4 copies of the label, and each disk has a globally unique ID that's random, but it's meant that no 2 disks will ever have the same ID. And so when ZFS goes to import a pool, what it does is scan every disk on the system and look for those labels. And then it finds the labels and just uses those disks. So it doesn't care if you pull the disk out of slot 0 and put it in slot 5 and vice versa, or just shuffle them around. It'll always find them because it's using the ZFS label on the disk to find them. That's a nice advantage over, I remember, having a server running like FreeBSD 7 or something, and the hard drive died, or the hard drive was failing, so they attached it as secondary and give me a new hard drive with a fresh install. And then if you didn't modify your FS tab file right, then it wouldn't find it, and it was just a mess. And ZFS just deals with this by always using its own labels. So yeah, it doesn't matter. Even if you move it to a different controller or the device name is completely different or something, it will just find it. I've actually even managed to...
I've replaced systems.
I've managed to actually...
throw the drives in a new box, and I don't even care what I plug them into.
I had an Adaptec RAID card that was not working very well, and I swapped it out for an LSI and just plugged the discs in. And even after changing the RAID metadata and stuff, ZFS just found it and worked. I was very happy about that. That system still works, even though it's quite old now.
Sure.
So yes, ZFS will always save your bacon.
Okay. Well, next up we have Stan, who's writing us about the installer. And he says, hello, BSD users. Great show. I fully support what you guys are going. Keep it up. I'm an OpenBSD user, and I want to try out FreeBSD on an older Dell E510 PC. I was able to use OpenBSD 5.7 on this older system with it seeing the single hard drive. I have an interest in putting only FreeBSD 10.1 on this PC, for I'm already using OpenBSD 5.7 on another system as a firewall. I burned a FreeBSD 10.1 code from the FTP site, started up the basic installation of the system. To my surprise, it failed to detect the hard drive. I've researched this issue and found that other FreeBSD users have had this problem as well. I did use an older FreeBSD 8.2 version and installed it, and to my surprise, it found the hard drive. I think the developers either took some driver code out in new versions of FreeBSD so the older hardware would not work. This is only my educated guess. Then he lists some of the links to the forums. He said, is anyone going to fix this bug or not? I'm having the same problem. And then he sends a link to the bug tracker.
Yeah, so I hunted this down a little bit. In FreeBSD 9, we switched to away from ATA to AHCI, and then with a backwards compatibility for ATA, which gives us much access to more advanced disk features like native command queuing and so on.
Sure. And
the particular motherboard chipset he has, the ICH7, there are certain versions of that chip that don't implement the AHCI correctly, and so claim to do it but aren't actually able to do
Support
it.
everything.
And so when we added the AHCI code, that controller was detected as AHCI instead of ATA, and then but the AHCI doesn't actually find the disks and it doesn't work. There was some talk about a patch to work it, or also the way to switch back to the old system. But I'm not sure what the best solution for this one is. In particular, with that being a known broken disk controller, your best bet might be like a PCI Express or PCI disk controller that just replace that ICH7. But if it wasn't so isolated a bug to specific broken hardware, it probably would be fixed by now. But since it's only very specific versions of a couple of motherboards, it hasn't really got the traction to anyone to worry about it, because it's rather old hardware now too. So yes, it's actually sad that doesn't work, but yeah. There are a couple of Bugzillas about it. One of them has a patch, but I don't know if it fixes it because I don't have broken hardware to test it on.
I suppose no firmware updates or anything that can fix that either.
Linux had the same problem with this particular chip, and they have some crazy hack to make it kind of work or something.
Sure.
So yeah, in this particular case, it's a known issue with that bit of hardware.
Okay. Well, hopefully there's not too many of them out there like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is annoying. I think a PCI card, just drop that in, maybe the easiest solution to this, just so you're not dealing with trying to work around an existing known.
Yeah,
like that.
I bought a little 2-port controller from the local computer store for like $7, and it gave me 2 more hard drive ports for my old storage server before I built the new one. And
nice.
Yeah, that was just the easiest way to do it.
Okay, well, next up we have Micah, who writes in asking about a drive failure. He said, "Hey guys, I just set up a new file server running FreeBSD 10.1. FreeBSD is running on 2 mirrored USB drivers, and then I have 3 2 terabyte disks and a ZFS mirror for data." He says, "I'm going to use ZFS to send the USB drive to a pool on the data mirror, as I'm a bit worried about the USB drives going bad." He said, "I'm also going to put a copy on some offline media. Can you explain what I'd need to do if both USB drives went bad at the same time? Thanks for the show."
If they both went bad at the same time, well, if all you want is your ZFS pullback, then you can just reinstall a new USB sticks and gpool import. If you want what's on the OS back, then yeah. So if you ZFS send all your data from the USB sticks to a data set on the ZFS mirror, then all you'd have to do is, boot FreeBSD. You could even use it like the installer image live CD. And then you could just ZFS send from the mirrored pool back to a new USB stick. And or you'd have to create a new pool on the USB stick and then ZFS send the data back to it, and you would have be restored.
Yeah.
It's quite simple.
Yeah, it's not too tough. I think you got to stamp boot sectors and all that, but just does the installer for FreeBSD keep a log of what commands were run to like stamp boot sectors and stuff?
Not exactly.
Okay.
You could do a fresh install onto it or something, but
Sure.
the FreeBSD wiki has instructions. They're a little old, but they still work.
It's still pretty straightforward for the gpart commands.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay.
I think actually the handbook might have more modern instructions. If it doesn't, I have to make sure it does.
Yeah, well, then somebody will have to take a look at that and get that fixed. Cool. Okay, well, we do have some mailing list gold to get to this week.
Yes.
So our first one, which coincidentally was posted on April 1st, says, "Hi all. FreeBSD today has a significant problem of attracting new developers. The lack of new developers manifests itself in a dearth of driver support, inadequate documentation, and trailing third-party packages. One of the key reasons for the lack of people is the high barrier of entry to joining the FreeBSD project. While every modern project uses Git, usually hosted on GitHub, FreeBSD uses a self-hosted subversion. The use of Git goes beyond just the choice of version control, and also for workflows that FreeBSD can't even dream of. The Linux kernel has no concept of a committer. Instead, anyone can clone the Git tree, build a kernel, and call themselves a Linux distribution. Our wiki and code review tools are even in worse position than our repository. In order to contribute, you need to send email to cluster admin and hope that they deem you worthy enough of access. The bug tracking system is in better shape, but it isn't perfect. While any user can create an account, their privileges are limited. They can't help close out bad PRs, reclassify good ones, or do other useful work. To solve this problem, I propose a simple solution: self-serve commit access. We create a web service on accounts.freebsd.org, which users can create themselves a free-fall account. In addition to a free-fall account, the identical username will be created for the Wiki and Fabricator, Bugzilla, and all other services we might provide. This will allow us to quickly gain a large number of contributors who will be able to make some better progress on our other missing features and rectify some of the drawbacks listed above. Today, I hope we turn ourselves from the cathedral into a truly open and democratic project.
In case it was people don't know, Freefall is the name of the machine at the FreeBSD cluster where developers get access to a machine to have a shell account and so on. And it's basically the account there is what controls your access to SVN and so on.
Sure.
So all this was posted on April 1st and was kind of meant as a joke. At the same time, it raises a lot of valid points. That's kind of Aiton's thing he likes to do is, poke people with a stick. And
I'd just say switch it to GitHub and be done. But that's just me.
GitHub has not been doing so well in the last week, in case you haven't noticed.
It has been a little slow, although I've been working all day on it, and, all week, and haven't had an issue aside from an extra 2 seconds waiting for it to connect.
And there's been some very good work into the FreeBSD clone on GitHub. There's a script now. I don't know if it's actually live yet, but the idea is that if someone creates a pull request on GitHub, it will the script will see it and take the patch and put it into our Bugzilla. So that really people will be able to just, people don't have to know about our Bugzilla. They can just send a pull request on GitHub, and instead of somebody going through and closing them every once in a while saying, hey, please file a PR instead, it will file the PR for them, and we might actually get those patches put in upstream.
If it could close the pull request too when you close the PR, that would be kind of cool.
Exactly.
Go backwards. Yeah. But that's some good points there.
So, hopefully we can address kind of both of these things. At the same time, we've had enough trouble with spam and stuff in the Bugzilla that I don't want random people being able to just go through and close things either.
Yeah. No, that just seems like not a good idea.
But, yes, we need more developers, and things we can do to make that easier would be good. So hopefully we can make that happen.
Cool. Next up in the mailing list gold, we have from the OpenBSD CVS. We have, looks like they've had to rename or remove. There's a function, realloc array, that the log message says, Xorg has stolen this from us. But then the follow-up, which is really good, it says, do you want me to read from the top here, Alan, or just the bottom part?
Sure.
Okay. He says, first person says, sorry, but the use of realloc array now requires you to link libx11. I didn't try building the kernel yet, but I don't doubt that you carefully considered the implications of linking the kernel against X11, in particular with respect to floppies. You're probably planning to give us the long-desired graphical installer. And it looks like here we got a comment here. Actually, we're working on the moment at making all the realloc array uses outside of the scope of small kernel so that the installation media doesn't get affected by this. We wanted to proceed differently, but adding the Oracle copyright notice at the beginning of the kernel message buffer outgrows all the installation floppies by about 400 kilobytes after compression. Wah, wah, wah. Yes. Nice.
Yeah. That's a good April Fool's joke.
Uh-huh.
And people playing along with it added to it quite a bit, yes.
Yes, it just spins out of control.
Yep.
So cool. Well, as we close the show, though, we hope you guys enjoyed that, first of all, and thanks for sticking around for our April Fool's episode. But we got some other stuff to discuss here, too, as we close. First up, we do want to mention, send your show ideas, topics, or stories you want mentioned on the show to feedback@bsdnow.tv. Let us know if there's something specific you'd like to see on a future episode, too, because sometimes that's the idea we need to go and do it, make it happen. And also a reminder, please don't send us comments on YouTube or anything like that. Like, we usually won't see those.
Yeah.
So email us if you actually want your comments to be seen.
Yep.
And also, if you can come on for an interview or know somebody who's doing something interesting with BSD, just poke and prod them a little bit.
Yes.
Get them to contact us so we can schedule that and make it happen.
Yes, we need more interviews, please.
Definitely, definitely. So, as we wrap up the show, though, this is not necessarily part of the April Fool's episode, of
Yes.
course, but some more serious news here. We wanted to dedicate this week's episode to the chairman of the EuroBSDCon Foundation, Paul Schenkefeld, who passed away this week.
Yes,
He's
over the weekend.
yeah, over the weekend. I know I got the news a couple days ago, but that was a major bummer to hear. We
Yes.
just saw him in Tokyo.
Yes, I just spent quite a bit of time with him in Tokyo. He was a good friend of mine, and we got some pictures and stories that people sent in. Here's him at EuroBSDCon 2011, which he hosted in the Netherlands. It was the biggest EuroBSDCon there's ever been so far, and I think it beat Malta by 2 people.
Nice.
And he was very proud of the fact that he's still held that record. And then here's him at EuroBSDCon 2012 in Poland, handing over the flag. They have a flag with all the projects printed on it, and it shows the flag of each country the conference has been to, and they pass that along each year and add the extra flag. And so here he is giving it to Powell for Poland, and then here's last year. You can see it in his hand there as he's announcing that this year's EuroBSDCon would be in Stockholm.
But he's been a staple of the EuroBSDCon organization for a long time. I know I've had many good conversations with him, hung out with him. As I said, we just saw him in Tokyo a few weeks ago, so that was a major shock to hear the news that he had passed on this weekend.
Yes.
But a dedicated BSD user and advocate, very known for his work in keeping EuroBSDCon fair and balanced to all the BSDs. So something to strive for all the conferences going forward, to kind of respect his legacy there. But we have a bunch of links in the show notes here if you'd like to find out a little more about him. We have his FOSDEM talk, as well as the interview we did with him not too long ago, around before Christmas this last year, and also a BSD Talks interview that Will Bachman did with him as well.
Yes.
So if you haven't, met Paul or ever had the opportunity to do that, it's well worthwhile spending a little time to go look at some of the stuff he's left behind and the legacy of his involvement with the BSD project. So,
So Jordan Hubbard, who is the one of the original founders of the FreeBSD project, sent us a message about that. He says, Paul was, in many ways, the BSD ambassador we never even knew how much we needed until he came along. He says he remembers Paul from countless conferences, always circling around and saying hello to everyone, asking how we were doing, and promoting whatever conference we were at and which the next one was, with a gentle sort of enthusiasm. It's kind of hard to describe. Paul was never in-your-face, gregarious, but yet somehow managed to put people together in informal conversations and keep everyone up to date on the social activities and other events surrounding the conference. While other BSD personalities can be occasionally abrasive and perhaps even have a track record of both attracting and alienating people in equal measure, Jordan says that he was definitely guilty of that. No one ever had an unkind word to say about Paul. He was just a really sweet guy who loved the BSD community as much as it loved him back, and he will be sorely missed.
Definitely. He's missed already, and we can never say thank you enough for all the work you did, Paul, and of course, we wish that you rest in peace.
And we also have another letter here. Camila, who we happened to interview in Tokyo at the urging of Paul, who is mentoring her at Google, wrote in a little story she had about Paul as well. Paul was taking flying lessons, and she had always dreamt of that. And so one weekend he invited her along to go with him and just ride along while he was getting his lesson. But what she didn't know is that Paul had talked to the instructor ahead of time, and he landed after about 20 minutes of his 30-minute flying lesson. And then the instructor and he climbed out of the plane, and as Camilla tried to climb out, Paul said no and pointed her to the driver's seat. And he let her have the last 10 minutes of his flying lesson, and she says she was very surprised and will never forget how much joy she got from that. And
yes, definitely loved by all those who met him. So
she says
definitely a big part of the conference. EuroBSD and the other conferences won't be the same without him.
Yeah, and she says she will always remember how Paul loved to give and make other people happy.
So as we close up the show today, though, we do want to dedicate this to Paul's memory and as a thanks for everything he had done and all the people he touched in his time here.
Yes. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.